I thought this was going to be an easy video to show you just how quickly you can disassemble and reassemble an Omnibot. Boy, was I wrong. Stay tuned. Okay, so today I received this Tomy Hearoid robot. It's missing the remote, but we have a few remotes for these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very quick time-lapse teardown of this thing so you can see how it's torn down. We will clean it up and then put it back together, and hopefully we'll have a robot that looks like new again. So it's dirty, it's a bit of a mess, but nothing that a little bit of cleaning can't cure once you get it all apart. There's nothing that seems to be broken. The battery's definitely not going to be good for sure. And then we'll have to deal with some of the corrosion, on the battery terminals and make sure they're still good. Otherwise, we'll have to replace them. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to stop the time lapse right here for a second because this is important. The power plug from the top has a black and a red lead that goes in. These don't just pop straight out. You have to be really careful. They come up just a little bit in order to loosen the wire that's already in there. So you just have to pop them up to get the wire loose and pop the wires out. It's not like the rest of the connectors, so you kind of have to be a little careful with that. So let's proceed. Okay, so now that we have this whole thing apart, we'll put all the parts together on the table in a second, but what I do next is I look at the belt, because the belt usually gets deteriorated inside the cassette player. So let's take a look at the belt to see if it's going to need replacing. Now would be the time to do it. Yeah, so you can see that the belt is pretty melted and it's gooey. So you want to put some gloves on if you don't want this goop all over your hands. And the thing that will clean this up is isopropyl alcohol. So that's what we're going to go and get right now. Okay, so I'm pretty sure it's clean. You want to make sure that you've taken all the goop off, because if you don't and you put your replacement belt on, it's just going to get all over the replacement belt, and that's not going to be good because it'll just carry the goop with it when it starts to spin. So gotta make sure we get it off all the pulleys, the small one and the large one. Pretty comfortable that that's cleaned up. Usually I find them a lot worse shape than this. Most of it came off gracefully. So let's get a replacement belt on here and then we can shore this up. Okay, so we have a replacement belt here and it goes into the top groove of the, and I just spin it a little bit just to get it well on track, which it is. So that looks good. You can see how dirty that got. Okay, so obviously there's going to be a lot of cleaning taking place. The cassette unit needs to be cleaned. So let's take these arms apart because these will have to be cleaned. Now you could take the whole thing, the whole arm apart completely, but I find I don't really need to do that to get a good cleaning out of it. I usually just take the top piece and then just clean the rest of it while it's still in place. If you wanted to be more thorough, you could take these completely apart. Once you take out the part I'm going to take out now, there's 4 more screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, that need to be taken out. That'll take out this piece, and then these 2 screws on either side hold the arm in place. So, yeah. Be careful when you unscrew this, there's a spring there. It'll pop everything off as soon as it gets unscrewed. When you tighten this back up, you want to tighten it all the way down. So, just so you know. And these washers are important because they act as spacers to give the spring more tension. So, you want to make sure you place the washers back. Okay, so if I took this screw off, that'll pop this out. But again, for cleaning, don't really think I need to do that. Although this is pretty dirty, but you could if you want to, but I have enough cleaning experience with these things where I can get inside the crevices here and clean this up. So I'm not gonna bother doing that, but it's up to you whether you wanna do it or not. Okay. So that's the whole thing completely taken apart. The other thing you want to make a note of is these arms are not the same. One is bent, has has a different angle than the other. So make sure you put these back the same way that you took them off. So I usually try to keep the pieces together so I know, and I clean them individually so that way, you know, because if I put them in the other way, backwards, I don't know if you can tell, but you know that the angle on the top or the bottom, it will be off and the arm's not going to work correctly. So you have to make sure that you keep the same geometry intact when you take these apart. Okay, so as you can see, we got a lot of cleaning ahead of us. So I'm going to attack that. What I use is Windex to clean these. Some of the bigger parts I will put under a hot soap and water. First I clean it with Windex and then the hot soap and water. The Windex kind of leaves the film. Sometimes it doesn't, you know, it looks like it's clean, but then when it dries, there's residue left over. So the other thing that we can do is there are 4 screws, actually 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that hold the gear case in place. So you could also take the gear case off, and then the wheels have rods that are in place that basically pop into their holders. So in fact, this thing is so dirty. Why don't I go ahead and do that? Let's go ahead and take the gear case off. There's 6 screws, sorry, not 5. There's one's in the middle. Okay, so that's how the gear case comes off. So we'll be cleaning that up. Okay, so got the gear case off. Remember how these go back in? Actually, it doesn't really matter how these go back in, to be honest with you. They have gears on both sides. So we clean this up. This is pretty bad shape, so that'll be cleaned up on its own. The treads on these, that'd be the time to replace them, but the treads on these look really good, which is interesting, which is kind of unusual because usually they're flat because this thing weighs a lot, and when it sits, it flattens the treads. But in this case, they look pretty decent. So this might have just been sitting on a rug or some soft material where the treads really didn't get all that flat. So that's good. We'll wash the wheels and the treads up as well under hot soap and water. So I'll come back once everything is washed and clean, and then we'll do a real quick test and put this thing all back together again. All right, so after about an hour of cleaning all of this stuff up, I think we're ready to go ahead and put this back together again. That looks nice and clean. So I'll put this aside for now. Okay, so now that we got this thing back together again, before we put all of the screws back in and put all the headgear back on and everything, well, we can put the headgear back on now, but I was gonna say, let's go ahead and test this before I put the rest of the screws in case something didn't come out right, if you know what I mean. So these are labeled R and L, right and left. Gotta make sure you put them on the correct right or left, because otherwise the logo here won't match, won't come up vertically. It'll stay crooked. So. Okay, so let's get a battery and a remote and let's test this puppy out. So it seems when the talk button is on, the light goes on and off. And it starts taking all the other signals, but it doesn't move, it doesn't go forward and back. And when I shut the talk off, nothing seems to work. So there is something going on here. So let me take this thing back apart and make sure we got it all wired correctly. A constant 5 volts on the two ends here. Okay, so when I press this down, I'm getting voltage. I'm pressing up. So I'm pressing up, I'm getting minus volts. And when I press down, when I press up, I'm getting positive volts. When I press down, I'm getting minus volts, which is what I should be getting. So I am getting voltage to the motors. The remote is working, so that kind of tells me that there's something up with the gearbox. Okay, because those two there are the forward and backwards. The ones on the ends, the brown and the yellow. So let's take a look at this one more time here. There we go. Yeah, but only this side is working. This side. That side's not functioning. Okay, let's take this apart here. Take this gearbox out. Okay, so that's obviously getting voltage. Let's see, let's see if we're getting voltage at all to this motor. Maybe it's just that the motor is stuck. No, I'm not getting any voltage at all to this. So is it the plug? If it's not any voltage coming in here, then I gotta check the switch. The switch is on the back. So 3.5 volts getting there. Not getting anything here. Yellow and brown. Yellow and brown. And I am getting voltage here. So that's the problem. Boom. They weren't getting a good solder connection. Yep. That would do it. All right. So let me go get this thing soldered up right here, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I got this soldered back on, the 2 wires here that broke off. So we are, I think, in a good place now. Looks like this thing got hit with moisture, because I had to do some repairs to that soldering. The traces on the circuit board were corroded off, so that was a little bit of a problem. Okay, so now let's try this. There you go. So both are spinning now. All right. So that was the issue with the motors. I think I still have an issue with the cassette deck, but let's see what we have. Let's get this thing back together here real quick. Yep. Okay. One more check here. We should be seeing these wheels both turn as we move forward. Yep. Okay, and then they go right and left. Okay, so now that we got that figured out, that just leaves the cassette deck. The play button on it doesn't want to work. Fast forward works. Reverse works. Play has an issue. And I'm afraid in order to figure that one out, we're going to have to take this thing apart again. So here we go again. All right, let's see now. No, it's not what we want to see. I'm gonna get a tighter rubber band. Let's see what happens here with this one. I have this one that's a little bit tighter too, so. Okay. This one's even tighter. Okay, it looks like the rubber band or the band that was on it just wasn't tight enough. I needed a tighter band. So I was using the bands that I use on the Roby Seniors and on the Omnibot 2000s. So I do know that the gears are a little bit different, at least on the Roby Senior and on the Omnibot. Sorry, on the small Omnibot. What is it? 5402, 4502, something like that. Anyways, so that I think is the issue, that this is a little bit of a different gear setup, and it needed a tighter rubber band than the one that I put on, or a tighter band than the one I put on there, apparently. Because now this seems to work just fine. All right, so let's put this back together again. Okay, I'm going to leave the head off only because I still have to repair the battery terminals, the AA battery terminals. Okay, now I think we're ready to give this a final test. My goodness. What a adventure this one was. So let's try this again. Again, we got to replace the AA battery terminals, but you don't need the battery terminals to make sure that this works. So let's turn on the remote. Let's turn this thing on. And now we should go backwards. Oh, sorry, forward I meant. Backwards. Forward. Okay, and then we should turn his right, left. We should do fast forward. Moment of truth. Play. Yay. Rewind. Play again. The rewind stops quickly because it thinks it's at the end of the tape, since there's no tape in there. There's a sensor, and the end of tape has a clear lining on it, so it thinks it's the end of the tape right now. That's why it's stopping. So, all right, if we do the talk. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4. Oop. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. And now the talk stops when I ask it to stop. We don't have the top on, but pretty sure the light is going to work. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So I think we're pretty much done with this. I was just about ready to end this video when all of a sudden I remembered one little tiny thing that I wanted to show you guys, and that is how I deal with the batteries, the corrosion. I completely forgot about that. So here's the thing. You can see there's corrosion on the battery terminals. This one is completely missing. This one is completely missing. And the corrosion is just about to get this one, you know, gone as well. So let's get down to this and how I replace them. So I have these that I order from Mauser. They're these little terminals. And let me show you what we have here. I can get this thing opened. All right. I'm going to see about replacing all 4 of these terminals, because the ones that are corroded in there I don't think are salvageable. So that's what we're going to replace them with. These are very thin. They're made of zinc. They're very thin. They're bendable and all that stuff. So let me take you through this. So on the back side here, okay, you can see, if you can see, back there towards the back, there the wires that go to the terminals that only the back part, the front part is gone, but the back part is still there, and there's wires soldered to them. They crisscross. Anyways, take a photo of that, okay, because we're going to be replacing these little copper plates and resoldering the wires, okay. So first things first, we have to take out the remnants of what's left. So we're going to drill out the little rivets here on all 4 of these. And then these little tabs should pop right out. If they don't already pop out, let me see. We may not even have to. And drill them out. Okay, yeah, no, they're stuck in there. So let's drill these things out. Okay, so I'm going to be using a 3/32 inch drill, and the reason for that is, one, it's just the right size to drill this out, but the other is that we're going to be riveting on new connectors here, and the smallest rivet that I have is 3/32, which is just about the size of this. It's almost like a 3mm hole. So let's drill out these rivets here. So now we have these things. So these little clips, we're going to go ahead and solder the wires on before we put them in. But what you want to do is you're going to want to drill a 3/32 inch hole right. You want to drill a 3/32 inch hole right about there, just beyond this little tab. And that is what we're going to rivet in place. So let me get these things soldered up here, or at least prepped for soldering. So that way it'll be easier for us to get all the wires hooked in after the fact. Okay. Okay, so I have these drilled out and the wires soldered. So basically, this will go in like this, red's on the bottom, this will go up at the top, and then this will crisscross. And then what'll happen is we'll solder the wires inside the robot, red to the bottom and black to the top. These are made out of some kind of tin or nickel. Anyways, they're really easy to solder onto. So it took like a minute. There's no, sometimes you have to struggle to get the solder to stick, and you have to use flux and everything. You didn't need to do that with this. So let's go ahead and put these on. So we can show you what's next here. So slide that in there. Probably could have used a shorter wire, but it's okay. Better long wire than too short a wire. So that'll go in place just like that. So how are we going to hold it in place? With a rivet. So we got ourselves a rivet gun from Harbor Freight, $5, and it comes with a bunch of different size rivets. So the hole that I drilled is a little bit bigger than 8/32, I think it is. So you just want to make sure you use the smallest rivet and drill a hole just a little bit larger than the rivet itself, so you can manage to get the rivet through. So let me see how I'm going to do this so I can show you what's going on here. Okay. So basically I'm going to take this rivet, I'm going to push it through the hole, like so, and through the hole on the other side. I did the top one, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but I'll do the bottom one and show you the same way. So basically it's riveted on, and this thing ain't going anywhere. So let's do this bottom one here. we got this other side right there. So push the rivet through. Make sure it goes through the hole of the connector that we just put in there. And when you're riveting, doing the gun, you want to keep pushing this against the wall while you're handling the trigger. So that way the rivet doesn't slide out of the position that it's in. Okay, that was easy. All right, so you can see the rivets in there, and I'll turn this around after I get the other two in there so you can see how it handled the other side. The other thing that you could do if you didn't want to use rivets is you can use little tiny flathead screws to hold it in, put a nut on the other side, but the rivets are more what was on there. So okay, so let's see what we got here. So you can see the 4 rivets that are in there. You can see the battery connectors that are in there. They don't extend up as much, so we're gonna have to bend them out a little bit because they don't extend up as much to catch probably the full battery, but they'll still work. We just gotta pull these out just a little tiny bit. And then on the flip side, you can see down there, the wire is crisscross, so we're gonna solder the negative and plus that we snipped earlier here, these two guys. Okay, down there. Okay. All right, so that was an ordeal because of the corrosion on these wires. It's pretty bad. I got the red, got the black, so that looks good. All right. So let's put some AA batteries in here to make sure that this thing works. Okay, we have to pull these little tabs out just a little bit, like I said before. They're shorter than the originals. No, I still don't see. Still don't see the light coming on. Okay, I think I finally got this thing squared away. What happened was, after I soldered the red and the black wires onto the back here, the front clock didn't light up. So after some troubleshooting, I found that that black wire and the red wire both were so corroded that it impacted the pins here where it, oh, in the back, here where it plugs in. You can't really see because it's dark back there. But, and it, the corrosion went to the pins that drive the clock. So basically what I did, I could have taken the whole board out and put it in a new connector and all that stuff, waited a week for it to arrive, whatever. But instead what I did is a couple of things to make this so much easier. So the red and the black wire go from here all the way to the front. What I did instead is I routed the black wire. Instead of routing it all the way to the front, I routed it here to ground, basically. So why they didn't do that to begin with, I don't know, rather than routing it all the way up front. And then the red wire that comes with the black wire here, that pair of wires is only to drive the clock. That's all it does. So what I did is that damaged pin is I routed the red wire that would have normally gone over there and wasn't making a connection because of the damaged pin. So I basically soldered a pin to that wire by itself since it didn't have a connector. And bottom line is the clock red, you know, positive now goes straight to the battery terminal, just like it was before. It just did it in a roundabout way. So now it's just a direct line to the battery terminal. So anyways, long story short, there was an issue, obviously, that we resolved that way. And then now, as you can see, the clock is working again. So now I'm going to just put this back together, and we should just probably just wrap this whole thing up. Okay, so this guy here, the yellow goes next to the orange. And then the green comes right to the back here next to the main positive. Okay. So now we just got to make sure that this is straight. So we can put this back together again. All right. I have quite a mess here. Just trying to find screws. Okay, so I just gotta put the little plastic connectors back here. Actually, I think that goes. Alrighty. So let me clean up this mess here, and then we can wrap this thing up. So I'll be right back. This thing really kicked my butt, but we persevered. So stay tuned and let's wrap this puppy up. Okay, so now that we've got this all back together and seemingly working, let's go through the final checks and wrap this up. And start first with the light. So the light works. Let's go with the voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the voice works. Let's go a little bit forward, a little back, a little bit of a turn, and then the other way. So all the functions here work just fine. So fast forward on the tape. Actually, let's go ahead and pull this out so we can take a look at the tape mechanisms here. Zoom in on that. All right, so here's fast forward, rewind. The reason it stops is because it thinks it's the end of the tape because there's no tape in it. There's play. Okay. The only thing we're not testing is training it with the voice, because I don't quite, I never got that down pat. So, but assuming that everything works, I can't imagine that the voice thing doesn't, but nonetheless, I'm not testing it. So anyways, the bottom line is this is very functional. And let's close this up. And yeah, I think that that pretty much will wrap this guy up. So there you have it. Hope you got something out of this video. It was quite a challenge. This is the typical things that go wrong with these right off the bat, is the corrosion. Not only do we have corrosion on the battery terminals that we had to replace, we had to redo the wiring, but we even had corrosion on the wires going to the clock timer that were corroded all the way through the wire, from one end of the wire all the way to the other end of the wire. It got so bad with corrosion that even one of the pins to the clock was fully corroded and wasn't conducting electricity anymore. So that's why the clock didn't work. So anyways, that's the typical thing that goes wrong with these things. That's the full recap in a nutshell. So hope you got something out of this. And you know, like I always say, live today like it's your last, because you only live once and life is short. Peace out.